race for the highest raid level was a competition I was looking forward to since the initial talks of the invocation system. From 400 to 500 to 510, and so on until 600 was completed, it was thrilling to watch it all pan out, including the 510 preview. But here's a question I'd like to ask. What happened behind the scenes that led to the completion of the 600 run? That's what we'll be talking about today. In this entry, I speak to Noobtype, the involved parties who help with Noobtype's run, as well as Khazard, a well-respected member of the PvM community. I also document most of the events which occurred up until the 600 clear was completed. So, hold on to your hats as we delve into this. Days before the 8th of September, aka the kit update, people were seeing how far they could push the raid level. Some of this involved suiciding and higher raid levels to stock up on Honey Locust, a consumable given on Death Wallus if the food info was turned off. It was funny of course, but people disavowed a non-flawless clear due to this. Outside of that incident, people were still trying to come up with strategies and experiment with different invocations to see how far they could get regarding a high raid level clear, and slowly but surely, progress was getting made. It's also important to mention that as people were pushing for higher raid level clears, new technology or unconventional methods were coming to light or being developed. Some of it was kept under wraps in fear of Jagex patching said methods, and this mostly stemmed from a method that we will be talking about much later in this video, the butterfly method. This was a method that would allow for you to kite Akka around the room while taking no damage and without needing to handle special attacks. However, Jagex would soon nerf it down to 1 minute, where Akka would cast a special and would chance swapping attack styles too, which is bad since the method relies on using mage against Akka. We'll discuss more about that method later. Now, the 400 milestone would eventually get broken by a Relify. However, this was done with the highest time invocation turned on, which some players believe that the time invocation is a free invo because it increases the raid difficulty, but you are most likely never going to complete the raid in 25 minutes. Players argue that it shouldn't count, however, I still think it was worth noting this achievement regardless. While others are trying their hand at higher raid level completions, I was lucky enough to be able to watch a close friend give it his all, trying to progress further for the highest raid level completion, and that man is Noobtype. The first run worth noting would be a 460 raid level clear with the time invocation turned on, which again led to some people questioning should it count. So, he did another 460 run, but this time without the time invocation turned on. And with that done, he continued to push his limits and started attempting to complete the first ever 500 raid level clear. He got close, but then he died with the final phase having a bit of HP left. That death left some time for another player to get the first 500 clear. A well-respected PvMer named Khazard would accomplish the first 500 raid level clear with no deaths. Although he had the time invocation on, I'd still like to say it's nothing short of an easy task since he still had to face off against 500 level enemies. But sadly the time invocation would bring upon some more debate on whether or not it should count. Now, this will be chronologically out of order, but I did speak with Khazard with a couple of questions many days after his clear. Here's what I asked him. Firstly, what were his general thoughts on people going for high invo clears? Secondly, is 600 completable at this time? And thirdly, what were his thoughts on unconventional methods as well as Jagex patching some of these methods, and people's response being hiding their methods? Firstly, he's really happy that for one, it's giving people an opportunity to showcase some cool stuff and get known like Noobtype and Saxerpillar, and he wants to see more people continue to push for the highest invo clear and invent new tech. He just prays we don't hit a point of stagnation. Secondly, regarding if 600 is possible, he thinks that some invos, especially the prayer ones, are unbalanced, but wouldn't be surprised if 600 becomes possible through boss or gear changes or if someone finds some more strategies. That or if Jagex makes more changes. Lastly, he said it applies to things way out of TOA and admits he has a bias to this, saying things should be kept as it is and removing it can kill strategical play or possibilities. Examples like Myth Season Inferno, both higher making on Prif rooftops. He notes that they are incredibly creative and difficult to use, but also admits that Jagex is getting a bit better with embracing these things, like introducing Poison Dynamite for spawn hitting for low-level accounts. He still prefers if these methods were left alone though. He also mentions that strats are usually hidden not because of gatekeeping, but because of the fact that Jagex can be so unpredictable and might patch it on the spot. In short, he thinks that Jagex should not patch unconventional methods, but also makes a note that removing things now isn't as bad as removing something that's been around for years like spawn hitting. He did note that what they did for Butterfly was okay, not completely removing it, saying it's still rewarding, but not as rewarding. However, he still believes that it should be left in the game and that it may give off the vibe that Jagex don't want player ingenuity and strategical depth in their game, even though that's probably not true. For those of you who want to read Port's full response to my questions, as this was somewhat paraphrased, please do so. It'll be in the description of this video. I tried to do my best to translate over his main points and shorten them, so hopefully I did an okay job with that. Now where was I? Ah yes, hours before Khazard's clear, Noob had upgraded to attempting 510 runs, having seen that he could use need less help instead of the invocation need some help. Khazard completing the 500 run also served as more motivation for Noobtype to continue sending runs. So, he spent days and nights sending runs over and over again experimenting, and this was no easy task. Death after death, the game presenting him with new unpleasant surprises. It was frustrating, but he knew he could not stop. The clock was ticking, with only a few hours left before the next update, which could be problematic based on what changes end up being made to the raid, since it can ultimately patch unconventional methods which were being used, which could mean that trying to clear a 500 raid would be impossible. A few hours before the next update hit, Noobtype did it. The 510 was completed, which heavily shocked the crowd seeing the invocations used, especially with dehydration and no food turned on. But, with all that said, I had the opportunity to thoroughly interview Noobtype regarding the journey to his clear, his motivations, and even his prior experiences going for challenges inside and outside of the game. I also spoke with the other involved parties regarding how they aided Noobtype in this accomplishment, because this was not a task done alone. What's your name?
I am Noobtype.
Okay, Noobtype, so I'll be asking a few questions in regards to your run and also asking you about some other experiences you've had with going for either world first completions or tough challenges in and out of RuneScape. What's your experience before this challenge regarding difficult challenges or trying to go for record/high rank placements? This can, of course, be in different games too.
So for RuneScape, I wanted to do a solo top, which I completed a couple of months ago. Then later, I wanted to push the hard mode top, but since there's reached the TOA, I've pushed those goals aside.
What about before though? Because before that, right, there was Twisted Slave that came out, and there was that race you were trying to do against Wooks, right? Tell me more about that.
During Twisted League, I was racing Wooks for first Death SCM completion. I was actually ahead of him, but the last item I needed was the whip. This was one day before he got the whip and tented on the same day. And here I was stuck at the Abbey Demons trying to get a whip. Yes, it took me 3 days just to get a whip.
Now, I know this is of course outside of RuneScape, but there was also that one game. I keep forgetting the name of the game, so you're gonna have to, help jog my memory here. There's that one game that everyone called you a fucking cheater. So tell us about that game.
A mobile game called Bleach Brave Souls. So they released this new game mode, which was incredibly difficult. So I wanted to have like a jab at it. A week after it was released, I came out with this new strat where you can have a very high score per run. We also had a leaderboard showing who has the highest score or whatever, and I was rank number 1 within the first week. So since I didn't release any strats, and I wanted to push for rank 1 in the game, a lot of people considered me a cheater. They even harassed my other friends in the game and sent me death threats. It's kind of crazy. They hated the fact that I was posting these high scores without any like legitimate proof. I did, however, like later on when people actually found out how it was done. It took like 6 months for the entire community to find out how it was possible.
Did you still get death threats after that, or?
No, I was still labeled as a cheater for some reason. They kept making up many ways to just label me as a cheater. He's like, oh, he has a modded iPhone or whatever. He jailbroke his new iPhone 8 first week.
What the fuck?
It's really weird.
So, what was your drive in wanting to go for the highest raid level completion?
I always wanted to push even further. So when I actually tested things myself, I thought, oh, this might be possible. First thing in the lab was 460. After that, I heard people didn't like the time invocation being turned on. So then I did it again without the time invocation. I didn't actually know about the gems until after that second 460 completion. So when I looked into it, I realized, oh, 500 might be possible.
And then poor Khazard got his run, and then you pushed it even further to 510.
He was the first 500 completion, for sure. When people found out about the time invo, some people don't count it, but I count it. Because you do the entire raid at that level.
Yeah, agreed. And his strategies for it too were very interesting, which is actually going to make me ask this next question, which is, you labbed out some very powerful strategies. So what were some of the strats that you created on your own? So
I did find out about Baba pretty early. I found my own way of doing the red X stall. It's walking through the boss. It should be kind of obvious that red X was possible in Baba, so that was pretty much a given. One thing I did figure out on my own is P2 Warden. I just relied on force proccing the redemption to get my HP back. I guess that's the most powerful strat I have, or I came up with.
I'd say there's one more, and that would be your use of the adrenaline potion with the yellow Kiris to get past the back.
Oh yeah, a lot of people told me like how to get past the back with Cripers on and no dehydration. Some people told me it was an exploit, but it was just really using the Kiris and adrenaline.
That was like a very clever use of the spec pot and the yellow Kiris to get past that challenge.
Yeah, you pretty much you still do the boss normally. It's just that just find a way to heal pretty much.
All right, so how many hours would you say it took to complete the 510 total?
Well, before the 510 was the 460. That one took me like a little over like 12 hours to figure out everything.
Okay.
Then when it came to the 510, all I needed to figure out was how to use the yellow Kiris. That only took me like a couple hours. It only took me like 2 or 3 hours to figure out where to use it properly.
Not only that, but if I recall correctly, there were a couple of times where you may or may not have gotten cucked at Warden because of the wrong Warden spawning.
I'm not sure how many skulls you need to proc the other Warden, so I haven't really tested much, but I just take like 4 skulls right next to Tumikin.
Of course, this run was done with the help of others as well. Who are the people who helped bring this run all together?
Saxerpillar definitely had a huge contribution. One, butterfly method. Everyone knows that now. He also showed me that you can locate it or the death balls at P1 Warden. So he did show me that you can do it with a stall, but when I actually tested it myself, messed around with P1 Warden, turns out you don't need to stall. You just proc redemption on a certain tick.
With that said, we'll be talking to one person who was a huge contributor to helping Noobtype complete his run. The man who created the butterfly method, as well as helped with some other pieces of tech, Saxerpillar. When did you realize that you could full kite Akka in a way where you take no damage within a quadrant?
I was in the middle of a run, and I was low on supplies running into Akka, so I thought I'd kite him for as long as I could. I managed to run around the room for so long that I killed 2 of the shadows, and that's when it hit me. I could kite him for the entire fight if I found a way. We thought his attack style would change after a while, so this wouldn't work, but that was proven wrong with that run. I was also really enthralled by the idea of a 600 raid level completion, so that was a great incentive to start labbing. I remember saying this, maybe in voice or Twitch chat. I don't have a screenshot of it, but I can't wait for GE Challenge M to figure this out, so I'm just gonna do it myself. I immediately started marking the outer bounds of the arena. The first thought was that I could do something GE Challenge M-esque, where there are certain marked tiles that I need to walk and run to attack in this weird pattern. I spent a good dozen hours just sitting at my computer, staring at the screen, trying to figure out where Akka would go on each tick and where I would stand. I noticed the way he was pathing. He wasn't going exactly as I predicted. I noticed he was pathing like a player, unlike most NPCs, where he prefers straight lines over diagonal. When I run in an L pattern, he doesn't attack me, and that felt really strange because almost every NPC, I think straight up every NPC, has to, when they reach you in the same tick, they'll melee you. If they're a melee NPC, they'll melee you first. I presume this is due to the unusual behavior Akka presents when he uses an auto attack, which is him standing still for 2 ticks. I immediately knew what I had to do. I connected the L's that I described together to form a circle around Akka. I could run around this circle and not get hit. This was a huge discovery because the circle, being a compact shape, was very easy to fit in the quadrant. I now only had to figure out how to save a tick to allow myself to stand still and attack. I then realized I could just run diagonally for one of the moves instead of an L. This version didn't have a preferred direction, meaning you could run clockwise or counterclockwise as long as you attacked at the right time. Since the circle is 8 tiled, you could actually do the butterfly in 8 different ways. 4 sets of tiles you can attack on, times 2 different directions. After discovering that this worked for one quadrant, I just mirrored and pasted the tiles onto the other quadrants. I initially also deleted some tiles to make it look less of a clutter on the screen, effectively choosing a direction for each quadrant. This had the indirect consequence of making the 4 quadrants, when viewed together, like a butterfly, which Gnome so keenly noticed and aptly named. I leaked it for the first time on no stream, and went into the streams one by one trying to get the word out. I figured it would have been found by the likes of G Challenge M, you know, the tech-savvy people that have been finding these kinds of methods, had I not found it earlier, so I wanted to take the spotlight. I think Addy's initial distaste of the method actually helped a fair bit in popularizing it even more. More controversy meant more popularity, and I was basking in the glory of the chaos I'd created. But on a more serious note, I think this ties into your next question.
Alright, I believe outside of Butterfly, you wanted to keep some tech under wraps for a while. What was your reasons for this?
So, due to the controversy that Butterfly got, I felt kind of unsafe in leaking tech, because a good chunk of people were calling it a cheese method or a method that just should get patched because it's unfair and skipping a lot of mechanics. I felt like there was a fair trade-off between the level of skill execution needed to actually do the tech versus what it was providing. It ended up getting patched a week later. I only discovered tech like after the Butterfly patch, and that was a good precedent to keep things under wraps. I really didn't like hiding tech, because I think everybody should benefit from tech, honestly. But if things are going to get patched, and I really want to complete a high invocation raid level, like, there's just no better choice. I think this just hurts other communities and people who haven't found tech or are incapable of finding tech because they can't benefit from it.
Outside of that, I got you and Noob into contact, and you both started sharing info with one another. What techs did you share that helped with the run?
The main thing was Butterfly, obviously. But I had a couple of ideas that I told him. I told him about the Baba Red X thing, which we named before. It turns out people already found out about that on their own.
I think he already knew about that one too. Yeah, like he was doing it, and then once I was seeing in your channel, I was like, oh shit, people are figuring it out. Oh no.
One of the ideas I immediately had was an Obelisk Phase Wardens, where you could stall with NPC contact. I remember you told me about using Locator Orb with NPC contact a while ago when I asked. And that's where the idea stayed in my head. I thought you could use Locator Orb, immediately NPC contact on the same tick, and then that would give you enough time to stall long enough to take the orbs. Of course, this was with the assumption that the orbs were going to do like more than 99 damage, which they ended up not scaling to. The other tech that I noticed was, since I noticed NPC Contact did something, I thought I'd just use NPC Contact in literally the entirety of the rest of the raid to lab. And the only place I found that was useful was the Kefri Dung stall, where if you stall right before you get hit by the dung attack that Kefri does, the one that gives you the flies around the player, and then paints the floor with dung. If you stall right before that on the right tick, you can actually make it so that the dung will only spawn on one tile, effectively not blocking off the rest of the room. I initially thought this was useless until Noobtype told me it could be really useful for medic, because you could run around the room as much as you wanted. And he did end up using that with medic for a little bit, until ultimately deciding he'd want to bring crossbow. But I still think this could have some use. The main sacrifice being that you have to bring lunars.
So, Piers helps me a lot on this setup. So, Maxcape, I didn't really need the Inferno, because I was thinking, if I can just Reddick stall Baba and get through Kefri without medic, melee really isn't an issue for me. Piers definitely helps you a lot with Kefri, learning how to trap them and stuff. So now a lot of people are doing the melee prison, as I like to call it.
Up next, we'll be talking to a person who has served to be one of my greatest adversaries, but he was still one of the biggest helps for Noobtype, helping him create his setup, as well as helping him with some other methods. The man himself, Perceptivity, also known as Piers. So Piers, in what ways did you help Noobtype with completing his run?
I did three main things, which was I changed his claws out for the rapier. Knowing that his claws were going to be effectively useless in the P2 Warden, and knowing that the rapier was going to add extra max hits that he didn't have on the Infernal Cape, Toy and I came to the consensus that he was going to have a multiple P2, so the claws were not as useful as the rapier.
Toy isn't Toy owner, right?
Yeah, Toy owner, yes. The second thing that I told him about, this was before it was public knowledge, was the trapping of the Overlords. So Kefri spawns the Ranger, the Major, and the Melee. Originally, we were meant to just trap the Ranger and the Melee. What was meant to happen was when the Major would come out, he would get out of the range of the Ranger, and focus on the Mage, kill the Mage, pray range, focus on the Melee, because the Melee heals the boss, and then kill the Ranger at the end. The last thing that I told Noob to do was to bring the Max Cape. Yes, the Infernal Cape gives extra max hits, but the Max Cape prayer bonus, the +2 extra prayer bonus was huge. It acts like a Holy Wrench as well. So whenever he uses a Sampu, he gets an extra 2 prep points on top. And also I noticed Noob was bringing multiple staminas into the run. The Max Cape was also useful because it acts as a Graceful Cape. Of course, when you have a Max Cape, you get the HP regen as well, multiplied by 2. So when that was factored in, I factored in that Noob would have 11 prayer bonus, which means that when I calculated it, it was an possible 80 prayer points that could be achieved using the Max Cape. So in theory, during a fight, you would have another spec for the Keris. Over time, that is.
Oh, because of the extra prayer?
Yes. We just wanted to make sure that he had enough prayer for the Warden's fight. I think 6 was an optimum number that I calculated. 6 Sampus, that is, by the end of it. He ended up having more.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure. So, this is going to probably be off topic. I gave Noob some other tech to see if he could increase the run. Before the 510 was achieved. We were contemplating Medic. We were seeing, in theory, if Medic could work. And of course, we didn't have enough time to do it. But I think that we could have done medic with the use of the crossbow. I think it was public knowledge at this point that you could use a crossbow.
Yeah. Or third age bow, but money.
Or third age bow, yeah. I also came up with some obsidian ring tech, where you could throw them off. Yes, they have a 7-tile range. I understand that they're probably not as good, but you can chuck them away mid-run as well, which would free up some space, so you're not clicking the pouch. If you are attempting a 500 run, maybe like now, and you are struggling with prayer pots or sand fuse or whatnot, an Eldridge wouldn't be a bad idea to bring into your runs, as they recover prayer back, and you can use it in multiple rooms. For example, the scarabs on Kefri,
Monkey room.
on the puzzle, the monkey room. Could also use it on the crocodiles as well. There's multiple ways where you can increase, getting your prayer back, which Noob didn't have to do in those runs.
With that said, though, let's get back to Noobtype. So, of course, we did the big reveal stream for the VOD, and your stream just blew up after that. And then you got raids from big streamers like Alfie and Puggin, as well as a lot of people mentioning you and trying to get in contact with you. Was this overwhelming, enjoyable, or how would you describe it?
I'm so in shock, honestly. I remember when I first got the 460, people were like, "Oh, this man has a world record or highest invo." Then Khazard came out with a 500. Then people thought that was insane. And then I had another method to push it to 510, which was the Yellow Keras. Then that suddenly blew up around the community. The 460, a lot of people are congratulating me in game. Like, geez, in the 460, when the 510 came around, a lot of people, there were a lot more corrections than congratulations. Because when they saw my invocation list, they were just like confused on how I did it.
The next question is, what was the reason on holding back revealing any technology to the public?
I was afraid that they'll patch up all these texts for in the run. Locator orb, the red X. Actually, that was pretty much it. So after the update, when they hadn't really changed it much, I started giving the green light. It's like, okay, go release the VOD. I really wanted to release it the day I completed it, but we were all scared of Jadex patching it up right after.
So, are you glad to see post-tech release and post-kit update that everyone's trying their hands on 500 now, and that there's more 500 clears? And there was someone who also did a 500 clear recently. I'm trying to remember his name. Hold on, it's like at the back of my head. Lord J. Rays, who completed it with both quiet prayers and silent prayers turned on as well.
Yeah. A lot of people kept saying the 500 bank kit reward was a bit overkill. But after the update, and when I looked at the changes, I was just thinking, this got a lot easier. I did get all 3 kits 2 hours after release, and some people didn't believe me that getting 500 is a lot more easier. But now we're seeing a lot more 500s being completed.
I mean, if you compare it back then, yes, but I would probably say it's still probably like quite a formidable challenge.
Oh yeah, definitely, yeah.
What changes would you like to see, if any, for the boss rooms, since some of them, like Baba, seem a bit crazy at high raid levels?
So Baba Red X, I definitely think it needs to be removed, but at the same time, let us have a way to clear the room without relying on RNG. Because I know if you face tank it, rely on blood free procs and Keras heals, Death Charge, there's a good chance to get through the room, but there's also that small portion where you'll also die. Solo Kefri Medic definitely needs to be adjusted. After the second shield goes down, the speed in which they spawn, the speed in which the swarms spawn, become a bit more faster. My suggestion for the solo change would be just keep the same speed as the first phase throughout the entire fight. Then it'll be much more like doable. For Akka, I do like the 60-second change of specials, but I don't like the fact that there's a small chance of Akka switching prayers. Even if you have not taken a single melee hit from him, there's still that small chance of him switching prayers. I really think they should make it more punishing if you mess up. So if you take like 2 or 3 melee hits, he'll switch prayers. But he'll never change attack styles when he does that Simon Says attack. I think if they adjust that aspect of the fight, Akka would actually be more doable.
So my next question is going to be, will you continue to push the boundaries of what's possible in regarding the highest raid level completion?
Yeah, of course. I'm always trying to push for like a higher difficulty if possible.
So,
That's always been in my nature.
Right now you're trying to go for, what was it, 545 or is it 540?
540.
And one of them was a no supply run too, right?
No help needed from the spirit.
Yeah. So, well, no supply in the sense of, not getting it from the spirit, but that's still kind of crazy.
So no salts from the spirits, no adrenaline. 540 invocation. I think higher than 540 without time invocation is possible. It's just testing that is a pain. Will I do it eventually? Yes.
Alright, is there anything else you'd like to say to the fans before you go?
Aye!
Now, September the 8th finally hit, also known as the day the new TOA kits and metamorphic dust components were released. And as we heard Noobtype say it, this update made 500 plus clears much easier than before because of the re-rating of points, changing how stats change with raid leveling, and on top of that, the Shadow received a hella nasty buff. The buff was 4 times increased accuracy and damage within the Tombs of Amascut instead of 3 times, making it stronger on the obelisk and the best in stat weapon for P3 Warden. So with those changes, Noob would then complete a quick 500 run to acquire all the kits all in one go, right on the launch of a new update. Afterwards, he would go back into the lab again because with that, he saw the opportunity to go even further. His next goal was a 540 invocation run, but there's a catch. The invocation set not only disallowed him to drink brews or eat food, but it cut off any supplies from the helpful spirit. No salts, no adrenaline pots, nothing. All he had at his side was his trusty super combat and an imbued heart. In his opinion, this was the hardest challenge run out of all of the runs he had done, including the runs we would be talking about next. Eventually, he would accomplish this run, but as we all know, it's not over yet. He would complete this on the day of the next update, but he did it sometime before the update hit. Once it did hit, more changes came to be, allowing you to get 10% of supplies at the highest supply invocation, which meant Noob would have access to salt and silent prayers became deadly prayers, now instead making it where any damage caused by raid mechanics will reduce your remaining prayer points by 20% of the damage you took, rounded down, which allowed you to complete rooms which initially were seen as near impossible with having both quiet and silent prayers on, combined making prayers 35% less effective versus 10% with only quiet turned on. Noobtype would then complete a 575 run, which was the maximum raid level you could complete without time invocations on. And then what happened, you might ask? 600. Although it was sadly impossible to try and clear 600 while making time, Noobtype did it for the challenge, as all the mobs would be scaled up to level 600 regardless. Another thing to note, a hotfix was made post-update to correct the bug with how any invocations affecting supplies reduced it more than intended. So now it guaranteed that even with a 90% reduction, you'd get 1 salt and an adrenaline potion, which was big for spamming the yellow keys. So he went to work.
Yes! 600! Yes!
All in one day. 540, 575, and last but not least, 600. I want to again congratulate Noobtype on such a crazy and well-deserved achievement. He put in the hours in the lab, sent runs for many hours, and the results definitely show for the hard work he put in. All of Noobtype's videos for his runs can be found in the description. If you've not seen them, I highly suggest you do. I will also be posting the socials as well. Again, credit goes to Saxerpillar and No Monkey Discord for helping with the run. Big shout out to Perceptivity for also sitting with Noobtype to help tweak his setup and helping with a couple of strategies. And although he's a well-known name in the community, shout out to Khazard for helping push for higher raid level clears and for answering my questions. Well, that's all she wrote. You can find the socials of the involved parties in the description. But before I go, I'd like to throw in an extra run from a friend, Lord J Rays, who completed the first expert solo in the game. He had completed a 500 raid level run with silent and quiet prayers on, and without a yellow Cures, which was a bit of a challenge with how hard the bosses could hit him. I've linked this run in the description for the curious eyes. I highly suggest you check it out. Anyways guys, I hope you really enjoyed this documentary type piece. This one definitely took a lot of time, but it was really fun editing this, and I'm really hoping that all the involved parties, I hope you guys enjoy watching this as well. Now, if you did enjoy this video and want to see more stuff like this, feel free to drop a like to let me know you guys enjoy the content, and drop a subscription if you want to see any more of my uploads in the future. If you have any more questions, obviously drop them in the comments, and I'll do my best to respond to them because I will always read all the comments on my videos. So, yeah, that is it. Thank you all for watching.